Good morning, everyone. I spent most of the day yesterday going over your rough drafts, and I want to make some comments and observations on them collectively. These are just general observations that I had across the board, and I wanted to address them so you can avoid doing them in your final drafts and avoid these mistakes as well in the future. The first thing that I want to mention is the order of your films. In your introductions, you are going to introduce the title of your films in a specific order. Keep that order consistent throughout the entirety of your essay. So, for example, if my two movies are The Patriot and Hacksaw Ridge, I am always going to talk about The Patriot first and then Hacksaw Ridge. If you want to change that, I don't care which order you discuss them in, as long as you keep that order consistent throughout the entirety of your paper. Film titles should be italicized, not in quotation marks, and they should always have proper punctuation. So if your movie has the article "the" in front of it, "the" should always be capitalized as well. When you're writing about your movies, stay in the present tense, not the past tense. When we write about text, especially with MLA style, you always want to refer to it in present tense. It's a common convention when we talk about pieces of art or literature or things like movies. They're not dead. Every time you talk about them, it happens again. So it's always in the present tense. Please make sure that you have an easily identifiable thesis statement at the end of your introductory paragraph. It should be clear, it should be specific, and it should have a topic, stance, and a so what. I don't know how many of you actually watched the thesis statement video. I'm sure you guys looked at the notes, but please go back and watch the video on writing the comparison contrast essay and the thesis statements video if you're still having problems forming a thesis statement. I talk a lot more than what you see on the slides. So make sure you have a topic, a stance, and a so what. That's important because that so what is the theme, the message, the idea that you want to develop through the entirety of your essay. When looking at your paragraph development, please pay attention to point comparison structure. I know that these paragraphs are going to look longer than your typical 5 to 6 sentences, and that's okay. They should, because I'm asking you to put a lot of information, and if they're short paragraphs, then they're probably not well developed. Remember, your topic sentence is going to identify the trope. It's not going to introduce a movie singularly. You're going to identify the trope. So you're going to unite the two films through that trope. Then you're going to break them apart again and talk about each movie individually by providing illustrations that illustrate the use of that trope. Then you're going to bring them together again in your explanation and provide some comparison and contrast analysis, and then finally conclude that paragraph by reiterating how that trope develops a so what. MLA format. Please make sure that you have in your upper, what is this, left-hand corner, your name, my name, the class number, and the date that the assignment is due in the day, month, year order. So for example, yours will be due 28th June 2020, not June 28th, 2020, not 6/28/20, January 28th June 2020. In the upper right-hand corner, you're going to have your last name and the page number. And then your title should be centered, and then that's all you need for an MLA format other than 12-point Times New Roman font, double spaced, and 1-inch margins. I urge you all not to use the MLA format template that is on Google or Word because it's out of date. It's going to tell you wrong. And especially, I noticed that some of you guys had headers in your rough draft. MLA format does not use headers, so don't use headers in your essay. Things to avoid, like the plague. These are things that you want to carry with you that aren't necessarily only applicable to this paper. I noticed that a lot of you use these declarative statements or these proclamative statements like, I'm going to analyze, the topic of my paper is. Avoid that. It's self-evident. It weakens these are empty phrases. When you write academically, you want to write with a tone of authority. And when you use these personal pronoun phrases like I am going to analyze, you don't have to do that. Just do it. It adds to your strength and in your voice, in your tone. Empty, fluffy personal phrases like I believe, in my opinion. If you remember back to week 1, when we talked about academic writing and stance and tone, I had an example about avoiding phrases like this with my example of the Real Housewives of the Real Housewives. I don't know if you watched it because I've noticed that people aren't watching my videos because I can see how many views it gets. So I urge you all to do so. But aside from that, you want to avoid these phrases like I believe, in my opinion. The tone that you're supposed to have for your writing in an academic setting is one of authority. And phrases like I believe, in my opinion, that weakens your authority. It makes it seem like it's not a valid viewpoint, and instead it's merely opinion, and your reader can dismiss your thoughts and your views and your analysis by adding those empty phrases. You also want to avoid the second person you. Instead, talk about the viewer. One might see, we can see. Instead of pinpointing and calling somebody out, it creates this, like I said in the when I was giving you guys feedback in your summary responses, it creates this inappropriate relationship between you and your audience, and it has a tendency to open you up to a bunch of grammatical issues. So please avoid that. Second use of the second person you. I think that's it as far as my observations. You guys are off to a really good start. I was really pleased with the things that, for those of you who turned in a complete final rough draft, the more help you were able to get. And I was really pleased to see such strong starts. So take the time to go through my comments and take the time to look at the comments of your peers in your individual groups, and let me know if you have any questions.